Have you ever wondered what really happens after death in Buddhist teachings? Is it true that we are reborn again and again, but not as the same self? And what if everything you think about the soul is actually just a mirage? In Buddhism, there's a common misunderstanding. People often think rebirth means the same as reincarnation, but they are not the same. The Buddha was very clear. Rebirth is not reincarnation. Rebirth, or punabhava, is a central idea in Buddhist philosophy. Yet it doesn't mean that a soul leaves one body and enters another. Buddhism doesn't talk about a soul at all. Instead, it describes a continuing stream of experiences, constantly flowing and transforming. Think of it not as a person traveling through lifetimes, but as a process of becoming, influenced by countless conditions. This ongoing flow is deeply rooted in the principle of dependent origination, or paticca samuppada. Everything that arises does so because of something else. Just like a spider's web, tug one thread and the whole web shivers. Our lives are woven from cause and effect, action and reaction. Nothing exists in isolation. Every thought, every feeling, every intention we hold is part of a larger network of interconnection. Many of us grow up believing in a fixed self, something solid, unchanging, continuous. But Buddhism challenges this belief. Rather than a solid I, it speaks of the stream of consciousness known as citta santana. This isn't a permanent identity, but a constantly shifting flow. It's made up of many elements. Citta, the basic awareness; cetasika, the mental factors like emotions, perceptions, and reactions; and vijñāna, the aspect that recognizes and interprets experiences. So what are we, really? Imagine a wave rising and falling in the ocean. Is the wave separate from the ocean? Not at all. It's just a temporary form of movement. In the same way, the self is not a lasting essence, but a dynamic ripple in the sea of existence. Our actions, what we do, say, and think, create karma, another misunderstood concept. Karma isn't some divine reward or punishment system. It's simply the natural law of cause and effect. Every intention we set leaves a trace in the mind. These seeds of intention can blossom later, shaping our future experiences. Picture someone who has spent years being negative, always complaining, always finding fault. Over time, this negativity becomes a habit, a karmic stream. But suppose that person learns about karma and begins to pay attention to their thoughts and words. They begin to practice kindness instead of criticism, patience instead of irritation. Slowly, their life begins to shift. The outer world doesn't magically change, but their relationship with life does. This transformation is not by accident, it is the unfolding of karma. In Buddhism, it's this ever-moving process, not a fixed self, that continues into another life. This teaching is known as anatta, or no self. The self we cling to is actually just a bundle of temporary moments. Like a mirage shimmering in the heat, it seems real until we look closer. The Buddha taught that there is no permanent soul that travels from life to life. Only the flow of consciousness carries on. And often, it's our deep attachment to this illusion of I that causes our greatest suffering. This insight isn't just a philosophical idea to admire from afar, it's a way of seeing life more clearly right now. Understanding rebirth in Buddhism is deeply connected to how we experience our present moment. It's not about waiting until death to see what happens. Instead, it's about becoming aware of the constant unfolding of the mind right here in this very breath. When we practice mindfulness and meditation, something profound begins to happen. We observe our thoughts come and go. We notice how feelings arise, stay for a while, and then fade away. We witness how certain reactions repeat themselves, shaped by past habits, past choices, past patterns. Slowly, we begin to see the stream of consciousness in motion, not as a fixed identity, but as a flowing current. It's no longer just a belief. We're actually experiencing the truth of change and causality with our own awareness. And through this first-hand seeing, we begin to understand how rebirth happens, not as a transfer of self, but as the continuation of conditions. This realization brings us closer to the path of liberation, because once we see the illusion, we no longer have to be trapped in it. Buddhist teachings aim to cut through illusion, to peel back the layers of assumption so we can live from truth, not from projection. This truth reveals not only the nature of suffering, but also the way to freedom from it. And this is where the Buddhist view of rebirth diverges greatly from the concept of reincarnation found in other traditions. Across many spiritual and philosophical systems, the idea of life continuing beyond death appears again and again, often in the form of reincarnation. But while the surface may seem similar, the underlying assumptions are very different. In many traditions, such as early Hinduism, the idea of a permanent self or soul, the Atman, is central. This Atman is believed to be the eternal, unchanging core of who we are. It is seen as a divine spark, the sacred essence that migrates from one body to another after death. In this view, reincarnation is the journey of that Atman through lifetimes. The ultimate goal in Hinduism is not merely to be reborn again and again, but to eventually break free from the cycle of samsara, the endless loop of birth and death, and to merge with Brahman, the ultimate reality. This liberation, called moksha, is achieved through right action, deep understanding, and devotion. Karma here plays a role as well, influencing the conditions of each rebirth until liberation is attained. Ancient Greek philosophy also explored this mystery. Thinkers like Plato believed in an immortal soul that existed before birth and would continue after death. According to Plato, the soul originally possessed perfect knowledge, but through becoming entangled in the material world, fell into ignorance. Reincarnation was seen as the soul's ongoing journey through different lives to cleanse itself and regain that original wisdom. For Plato, the tool of liberation wasn't devotion, but philosophy and reason. Meanwhile, in Sikhism, the concept of Atma, again, a divine spark within, is quite similar. This Atma moves through the cycle of birth and death. The quality of one's next life depends on their current actions. The ultimate purpose is to escape this cycle, not by intellectual reasoning, but by merging with the divine through devotion, meditation, and selfless service. So across these traditions, Hinduism, Greek philosophy, Sikhism, we see a pattern, a belief in a core self or soul that transmigrates from life to life. But Buddhism offers a radical shift, not a permanent self traveling through lifetimes, but a process of becoming, dependent on cause and effect. In many spiritual paths, the soul is seen as the central player, the eternal, unchanging core of who we are. The process of moving toward God, known in Sikhism as mukti, is about freeing this soul from the cycles of birth and death. Across various traditions, be it Hinduism, Sikhism, or ancient philosophies, the journey of the soul is motivated by a deep yearning to purify itself, to reunite with the divine, or to ascend into a higher state of being. In all of these worldviews, the soul is the anchor, a stable identity that continues its voyage, life after life. It is portrayed as the same self, merely housed in different bodies over time. But here is where Buddhism takes a radical turn. The Buddha did not teach the existence of a permanent soul. Instead, he pointed toward a process, an ever-changing stream of experience. What continues isn't a soul, but a flow of energy shaped by intention, action, and conditions. It is not a thing that travels, but rather a momentum, a continuity without a core. This distinction lies at the very heart of the difference between rebirth and reincarnation. Rebirth, as taught by the Buddha, rejects the idea of a fixed, unchanging self. Instead, it offers a view rooted in two essential principles: impermanence, anicca, and no self, anatta. These aren't just lofty concepts, they are direct insights into the nature of reality itself. The teaching of anatta doesn't deny that something continues from one moment to the next. But what continues is not an identity. It's a stream of consciousness, ever in flux. This stream is not solid, not permanent, and not owned by anyone. It is shaped by karma, our past intentions and actions, and it flows forward, moment by moment, like a river made of thoughts, emotions, and sensations. You can't point to a single drop in that river and say, "Here is the self," because by the time you do, it's already moved on. This understanding changes everything. It reshapes how we view life, suffering, and liberation. In traditions that teach a soul, suffering is often seen as the soul's entrapment in the physical world, a consequence of karmic debts or divine disconnection. Liberation, in that framework, is the cleansing and eventual freedom of the soul, achieved through devotion, good deeds, and divine union. But in Buddhism, suffering isn't a problem of the soul. It's a consequence of clinging to identity, to control, to the illusion of I and mine. The Buddha taught that liberation comes not from saving the self, but from letting go of the self. True freedom arises when we stop grasping at what doesn't truly exist. The Milindapanha, an ancient Buddhist text, offers a beautiful metaphor to explain this. Imagine a flame from one lamp lighting another. The new flame appears, but it isn't the same flame. Still, there's a connection. It's not a transfer of substance, but a transmission of energy. Likewise, rebirth is not about a self moving from one life to the next. It's about the continuation of conditions, a chain reaction governed by cause and effect, where nothing fixed is passed on. Continuity exists, yes, but not identity. So Buddhism doesn't deny that something carries forward. It simply refuses to call it a permanent me. To understand the mystery of continuity after death, we must look closely at one of the most essential aspects of Buddhist psychology, mental formations or sankharas. These are not things we possess, and they are certainly not a self. Rather, they are mental patterns, habits, reactions, tendencies that arise from our past actions, shaping our present moment and paving the way for the next. It is through the continuous arising and passing away of these formations, driven by intention and conditioned by karma, that the stream of consciousness continues to flow. Just as a river carries forward momentum without ever being the same river twice, this stream carries no fixed identity, but it does carry potential. This is the heart of Buddhist rebirth. What continues is not a person, but a process. To better understand this, the Buddha gave us a beautiful analogy in the Potthapada Sutta, the image of a mango tree. Imagine a mango seed planted in the earth. Over time, it becomes a tree. That tree bears fruit, and within that fruit are new seeds. The original seed doesn't jump into the next tree. It doesn't contain a fixed identity, but it carries within it the potential for future growth. Life continues through transformation, not transmission of a self. In the same way, our consciousness continues, not by carrying a me, but by transmitting karmic energy, seeds of potential that blossom under the right conditions. And so, the key difference between rebirth and reincarnation becomes even clearer. Reincarnation assumes a lasting soul migrating through lifetimes. Rebirth, as the Buddha taught, is a dynamic unfolding based entirely on causes and conditions, with no self at its core. This distinction isn't just academic. It radically reshapes how we see our place in the universe, the weight of our actions, and the path to freedom. These are not merely alternative concepts, they are two entirely different views of reality. One rooted in identity and permanence, the other rooted in impermanence and interdependence. And the second, the Buddhist view, demands deep reflection and practice to truly grasp. Now, what about the moment of death? How does the transition actually occur? In Buddhism, the process of death and rebirth is not about a soul jumping from one body into another. It's a transition from one set of experiences to another, governed entirely by karmic energy. Think of it as one wave fading out and another rising in response. Same ocean, different wave. This moment begins with what is called the kuticita, the last moment of consciousness in a person's life. It's like the final flicker of a candle before it goes out. But just as one flame can light the next, this final thought moment gives rise to patisandhicita, the linking consciousness that marks the beginning of a new existence. This isn't a random event. It is entirely conditioned by karma, our intentions, actions, and mental tendencies from the life that just ended. That karmic force is what propels the stream of consciousness into the next stage of becoming. Here, the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, come into play again. These aggregates don't survive death as solid entities. Instead, they dissolve and reassemble based on karmic conditions. The physical body fades, the senses shut down, and the old mental formations lose their grip. Yet the energy of intention, stored through karma, carries forward. The Buddha explained this process in the Shachaka Sutta. He described how consciousness arises from the interaction between sense organs and their objects, eye and form, ear and sound, and so on. But when the conditions cease, consciousness dissolves. At death, the previous consciousness ends, and a new moment of consciousness begins, linked by karmic force, not by identity. This linking consciousness marks the birth of a new life, one that unfolds in any of the different realms of existence, depending on past actions. The Buddhist cosmology speaks of various realms of existence, but it's important to remember, these aren't fixed places like countries on a map. They are states of being, shaped and defined entirely by karma, the mental, verbal, and physical actions we've performed. These realms are generally grouped into 3 broad categories: the realm of sense desire, Kamaloka, the realm of form, Rupaloka, and the formless realm, Arupaloka. Let's begin with the realm of sense desire, where most of us dwell. It includes 11 sub-realms, all saturated with sensory experiences, pleasure, pain, craving, satisfaction, and more. At the lower end of this spectrum are some of the most difficult states of existence. The hell realms, filled with unimaginable suffering, born of intense hatred and destructive actions. The animal realm, driven by instinct, fear, and survival. The realm of hungry ghosts, pretas, where beings suffer constant craving, never finding satisfaction, forever reaching but never receiving. The Asura realm, a world of jealousy and endless conflict. All of these are painful conditions, but they are not eternal. They are shaped by past karma and change with time. Then there's the human realm, the most precious and balanced of all. Here we experience both pleasure and pain. We have the ability to reflect, to practice, to change. This realm offers the rare opportunity to create positive karma, to cultivate wisdom, and to move toward liberation. Also, within the realm of sense desire are the 6 heavenly realms, places of great beauty, abundance, and joy. Beings here live in comfort, often reaping the rewards of good past actions. However, even these heavenly states are not free from the cycle of suffering, samsara. They are temporary, and when their good karma is exhausted, rebirth in lower realms can occur. Next, we have the realm of form, a far subtler domain. This category includes 16 meditative realms attained by beings who, in past lives, develop deep levels of concentration through meditation. In these realms, existence is refined. There's less attachment to sense objects, and joy arises from the stillness of the mind. Here, beings dwell in peace and stability, absorbed in meditative absorption, jhana. Even beyond that lies the formless realm, made up of 4 incredibly subtle realms where only consciousness remains. The body is transcended. These are states reached through profound meditation, where the mind is completely detached from form. Beings here experience vast stillness and pure mental presence. And yet, even these exalted states are impermanent. Nothing here escapes the law of karma and the cycle of rebirth. Why is understanding these realms important? Because they reflect the inner landscape of our own mind. Each realm mirrors a certain state of consciousness, a reflection of what we nurture inside. By observing our own thoughts, emotions, and reactions, we begin to see where we're headed. Are we feeding craving, conflict, compassion? Everything we experience now is impermanent, and this very impermanence is the same current that carries us beyond death. When we observe our inner world through mindfulness, we don't just live more clearly, we begin to understand the mechanisms of rebirth itself. By seeing clearly how thoughts give rise to actions and actions give rise to consequences, we begin to understand cause and effect. And through this understanding, we begin to let go of grasping, of clinging, of fear. We prepare ourselves for the inevitable changes ahead, including death. In Buddhism, death isn't the end. It's a passage, a transformation. And when we see that clearly, death loses its power to frighten us. We begin to live differently, with care, with wisdom, with compassion, knowing that every moment is a seed for the next. This is why rebirth isn't just an abstract idea. It's a lens through which we can live more intentionally, right here and now. In recent years, modern science, especially neuroscience and cognitive psychology, has started to explore the mysterious relationship between the mind and the body. While science still hasn't fully unraveled the mystery of consciousness, its investigations are beginning to echo certain insights found in Buddhist teachings, that mind and body are deeply interconnected and that our inner experiences have real consequences on our overall well-being. But Buddhism goes further. From a Buddhist perspective, the goal isn't simply to seek a better rebirth or to accumulate spiritual points. Instead, the purpose is much deeper: to cultivate wisdom, to nurture compassion, and to gradually let go of the illusion of a permanent self. It's not about chasing another life. It's about transforming this one. When we understand that every thought, word, and action leaves an imprint, it doesn't make us fearful. It makes us aware. It becomes a powerful call to responsibility. Each moment becomes an opportunity to plant seeds of peace, kindness, or clarity, not just for ourselves, but for the entire web of beings around us. The core Buddhist teachings, impermanence, anicca, no self, anatta, and the law of cause and effect, karma, are not meant to be abstract ideas floating in the clouds. They are direct reflections of our lived experience. Everything we feel, think, or cling to is constantly shifting. Nothing is fixed. Nothing lasts. Through meditation, we don't just learn about these truths, we see them. We observe our thoughts rise and fall like waves on the surface of a vast ocean. Our feelings swell and dissolve. Our mental images, worries, and desires, they come and go, moment by moment. And from this clear seeing, something begins to change. We loosen our grip. We hold life with more tenderness and less fear. We begin to live not from clinging, but from freedom. You may have heard stories of people remembering their past lives. These accounts are often fascinating, even inspiring. But the Buddha gave us a gentle reminder. Don't get lost in speculation. In the Malunkyaputta Sutta, a curious monk asked about metaphysical details, the nature of the universe, the self, and what comes after death. The Buddha responded wisely. Rather than chasing unanswerable questions, focus on what leads to freedom from suffering. In other words, what truly matters is not debating what happens after death, but learning to live mindfully, ethically, and wisely before it. So the understanding of rebirth is not really about becoming something else later. It's about becoming more awake right now. It's about transforming the stream of consciousness that flows through us at every moment, by shaping our habits, refining our mind, and purifying our heart. This path includes practical tools, meditation to observe the mind directly, mindfulness to stay rooted in the present, ethical conduct to bring harmony to our relationships and choices, and wisdom to see clearly the nature of life, death, and self. The Buddhist path is not a mystical escape. It is a return to reality, a path toward inner peace, freedom, and meaning, right here in this life. That's why the teachings on rebirth are not irrelevant. They are essential, not because they promise a future paradise, but because they help us understand how our choices today shape tomorrow's consciousness. And in doing so, they encourage us to live with intention, to live with purpose. So in the end, the teachings on rebirth are a profound mirror. They reflect the nature of existence, the reality of death, and the beautiful potential of every moment to become a step toward liberation. If this teaching touched your heart or offered clarity to your path, we warmly invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds to continue receiving wisdom rooted in ancient truth. Feel free to like and share this video if you feel it may bring peace to someone else's journey. And if any part of this message resonated with you, we'd love to hear your reflection. Leave a thoughtful comment below. Your words may inspire someone who needs it most.